Hey, everybody. Good morning and welcome to the Work Should Feel Good show, the show where your career growth meets your real life. I'm your host, Diana Alt, and today my guest, Mark Foster, and I are going to dig into the power of having a hopeful mindset even when it seems like your world is on fire. Mark is one of the very first people I knew I wanted to have on the show whenever I decided that I was going to launch it. He is a pastor, coach, writer, and public speaker, which goes with the pastor thing, I think. Passionate about giving people this, helping people regain their sense of autonomy and break free of feeling trapped. He empowers individuals to see new possibilities, take intentional action, and create meaningful change. As a father of four, Mark values resilience and hope. He believes no matter how challenging the circumstances, there's always choices, and no one is as stuck as they might feel. Um, Mark equips people with practical tools to cultivate autonomy and hope, and his mission is simple but profound: to see hope levels rise as individuals recognize their power and change their own stories. So, welcome to the show, Mark.
Hey, thank you,
Uh,
Diana.
I I I just love you so much. You have no
Oh, well, the
idea.
feeling is
Like,
mutual.
I think that what you're trying to do is so important.
Hmm.
And it was important. We met what, like a year ago
Yep.
in Vincent Pugliese community.
Yeah.
And it was important then. Like we hadn't even gotten into like the craziness that
Mhm.
became the switching of the presidential candidates and like
Mhm.
aftermath of concerns about elections, which happen no matter who wins or who
Right.
loses. Like we weren't even in any of that. We were just in like going through life.
Yep.
And you started talking about hope on your page
Mhm.
on Facebook and then have kind of grown it into a platform. So one thing I want to talk to you about first is what is one of the most impactful moments where you were able to personally transition from feeling hopeless to more hopeful? How did that play out?
So probably 3 years ago, uh, we had a dryer just stop working downstairs, or maybe it was the washing machine. It was one of those
I
2
didn't
in
have
the
the
basement.
dryer on my bingo card. Like,
Oh.
I love, lay it on me. Keep
Okay.
talking. I want to hear
Okay.
about the dryer.
Okay. So I think it was the washing machine. But anyway, my wife came upstairs and told me that the washing machine was kaput, and I absolutely lost my cool. I was really angry. I had been angry for a long time, primarily because I felt like I was trapped and stuck in some life situations. And it was really my wife who's like, "We can't live this way. You gotta find a way to deal with this. I can't even tell you when things break because you just get angry." Anger, for not for everybody, but for a lot of people, is usually a sign of feeling trapped or in despair
Hmm.
or hopeless. So it
Yeah.
was for me. And so I heard that, took some time to think through it, and found someone that could help me think through the areas where I felt like I was trapped. One of the things that I tell people is that there's never nothing you can do. And that sounds really great, except I thought there was nothing I could do.
Hmm.
And so we started putting together a list of, here are some options you could take. Here's how what that might look. Here's how the fears that you are facing might not be real, but you won't know until you try. And even if you do try,
Hmm.
maybe it won't go so bad. And I just started with the smallest ones and started taking some specific actions, even though I was a little bit afraid. And what I found was when I set those smaller goals inside of a macro situation that I couldn't change, I started feeling like, wow, I didn't die. And so I'll try the next thing. And so I didn't change everything overnight. But what I learned was that I could start doing those things. And as I did them, this feeling started welling up inside me like maybe I can actually take actions that can change both my present and maybe even my future. And so
Right.
I always look back to the day that the washing machine, went on the fritz as the start of that really pivotal journey for me.
I love that story so much because a lot of times when I ask people this kind of thing, and I don't always use hope language, like, I
Mhm.
use other language, but I like that you straight up come and talk about hope, which many people think of as a religious concept, but
Yeah.
it's not just a religious concept.
Nope.
But I a lot of times it's like, "I got cancer, my mom died, my kid got sick, my" you're
Mhm.
like, "I lost my job and couldn't find one for a year." Like, it's very, very big things like that,
Yep.
but to me, if you manage yourself so that you can handle when the dryer breaks,
Mhm.
it makes it so much easier to handle whenever you get fired,
Yes.
or when anything else kind of happens.
Yep.
And I've been working to cultivate a lot of this myself for a long time because I've been through it. And in 2018, I was feeling very, very hopeless and burned out in a job that I was in. I had a boss that I loved, which was one of the things that kept me there.
Mhm.
And somewhere in the course of that, I decided to take some miniature actions, which we'll get more into this as we go. But it ended up leading to me ultimately deciding to extract myself from a terrible situation about 6 months later or so, and then build what I've been working on building now. So
Yeah.
I'll take happy any day over burnout, that's for
Oh,
sure.
absolutely.
But
Yep. And
it's
it
it's for
wasn't it
sure.
wasn't I wasn't hopeless about dryers and home improvements, but that's the thing. If it's a job related, if hope levels are low in your job related and in your career related world, that overflows into everything, and usually
And
the people
vice
that are
versa.
closest to us. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
and vice versa.
Yep.
So here's a question I've got for you.
Okay.
You talked about this dryer situation and how you
Mhm.
were angry a lot 3 years ago. One
Mhm.
thing that has come up for me a lot ever since I met you is that you're a noticer.
Mm.
Like we were just talking right before we went on. Mark and I were at a conference a few weeks ago, and he saw a tattoo. I have a tattoo that's a nautilus shell and a quote from a poem. And he asked me for my address, which we're close enough that that wasn't weird after the conference. And he sent me this nautilus shell necklace off of Etsy,
Mhm.
which most people would never, they don't pay attention to tattoos or they would never think to take that kind of stuff. So, have you always been a noticer and were you a noticer during that angry part of your life? Tell me about that. What are some of your stories of noticing?
Yeah, I think noticing has always been something that I've done during the probably 5 or 6 years that I was really angry. I tended to be more self-focused and less of a noticer,
Mhm.
because, lack of hope, anger, I'm feeling sorry for myself, the world sucks, everybody's against me. So anger
Yeah.
can minimize your ability to notice other people. Um, so I think it's always been something that I love to do. I love to do that when I go out into and I'm trying to have conversations with people in the corporate or just out in public. I love to look for things that stand out, things that are a little bit different, so that I can have conversations. Tattoos is actually one of those things. Most people get tattoos nowadays. They're very, very personal. There's a reason that somebody gets a tattoo, and so I love to look for those kinds of things, to either have conversations, or if it's someone that I know well, maybe let them know that I saw that, and I know that that means something important to you.
Mhm. It's really nice too because it's, like, unexpected. There are so many
Mhm.
people that work as pastors or other forms of ministry,
Mhm.
regardless of what the religion is, that are against tattoos. There's a
Mhm.
lot of religions that are against tattoos, so for many people, they might hear a pastor asking about their tattoo and assume they're about to get a sermon.
I would get
So,
one, except I am such a sissy when it comes to needles and pain. There's no way. And
you know
plus,
what?
as soon as I get one, I would change my mind about it.
It was way easier than I thought about it. My
Ugh.
guideline when my niece I had wanted this for 20 years. My niece, and I started talking about it in college, and she wanted to go get one, like, as soon as she earned money and, like,
Yep.
I'm saving up my money for it. And I said, "Wait until you've wanted the same approximate thing for 1 to 2 years,
Yes.
and then you're gonna be good to go on that." So, tell us a little bit about your career journey. Um, where'd you start? I know you're a pastor now.
Mhm.
You started your Hope Focus community. Give us a
Mhm.
little tour of that.
Okay, so once upon a time in a land far, far away, When I was 25 years of age, I actually started as a senior pastor for the first time, super young,
Oh,
probably way too
that's
young.
very young
Um,
for that.
but the church was desperate, and they would have taken anybody. And so I will always be grateful for them uh, giving me that opportunity to make a lot of mistakes, to learn on the job. And so I've been doing that full time since I was 25, and I'll be 45 in May. So
Oh,
20
wow.
years as a full time, and then 2 years as an associate before that. And I've worked part-time jobs here and there to pay the bills because pastors make tens of dollars a month usually. Um, and
Uh,
when I moved here to Maine, which is the second church that I have pastored, I also started working as an EMT and chaplain for our local fire and
oh,
EMS. So I did that for about 6 years. I'm no longer in that role currently right now, but I enjoyed that a lot, and I got a chance to learn and see a lot of things going on in that role. So my career has been in service and a forward-facing, people-facing type of work, specifically in volunteer organization. So, a lot of churches, you're managing volunteers, which is quite a bit different. I've held management roles in various, other jobs that I've done to pay the bills over the years, but being a executive of a volunteer organization has been
that
primarily what I've done.
that is very hard stuff.
Yeah.
How did your time working as a chaplain for the fire department, chaplain slash EMT,
Mhm.
inform what you're doing now? Because that is not a self-selecting group of people the way that a church congregation or other volunteer groups are. So, what changed for you as a result of working in that environment?
One of the things that changed for me was the recognition that easy answers didn't work in
Mm,
and churches are great at platitudes and easy answers.
yeah.
So when it's 2 o'clock in the morning and you're sitting in the living room of a mom and dad whose child's body is in the back room from a self-inflicted gunshot wound, um, then all of the easy answers and platitudes that you've learned your whole life just are meaningless in those moments. And how do you step into a chaotic situation and begin to bring some hope and help in those desperate situations, and not just that night, but in the days and weeks following that? How do you help people in the first responder world, EMS, sheriff's deputies, state troopers, who see this kind of stuff all the time, and they become cynical, and they
Mhm.
disengage emotionally? There's a lot of mental health and substance abuse, high divorce rates in the first responder community because
Yeah.
of what they deal with. No judgment, it's just
Military
what they
too.
deal with. Military as well. And so hope theory ties directly into that. And so I started having to scratch my head and figure out, if I'm going to help these people, how can I help them? Because the message that I have isn't they're not in a place where this message is doing them any good. And if I'm going to
Mhm.
be able to bring some real help in this situation, what can I do from the moment I walk in the door to the meeting I have a month later with these people? So that kind of started that process for me.
Yeah, God has a plan doesn't work when, like, your husband is dead on the floor of a
Nope.
heart attack or
Nope.
something like that.
Yeah, they're
So,
in none of that stuff. Absolutely.
it's really a very interesting thing. And then also chaplain, that's considered an ecumenical role. So you have to look at
Correct.
perspective, not just from is it Baptist or Methodist or
Correct.
Catholic, but is it Muslim? Is it atheist? Is it agnostic? Is it Hindi? Is it something else? Right?
Yes. Yeah, and so I viewed and I had a lot of latitude in the small department that I started with. I could have been, had I wanted to, I could have been evangelistic, but I chose to use the chaplain title more in that I want to be able to help everyone with what they're dealing with. I'm always open to talking about my faith with anybody who wants to talk about it, but as a chaplain, I didn't view it as being a pastor. I viewed it
Mhm.
as helping, as doing soul care in the community, in wherever someone was. And what I found is that the chaplains who are least effective, there may be chaplains listening who would disagree, that's fine, but the chaplains who are least effective are the ones who can't disengage their personal positions when trying to step into into that role and help in a department where there may be atheists or, like you said, people from other faith backgrounds.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I don't know if I answered that question or not.
Oh, you did. I mean, we're just having a conversation.
Just talking.
We're just talking, pal.
Yeah.
That's all there is. The name of our show here, it's Work She Feels Good. That's an ethos I've worked by. So when you think about that phrase, what comes to mind for you? If you had to define what is work that feels good for Mark, what does that look like?
For me, it's work where I feel like I'm able to do things that matter, do things that make a difference, have some degree of autonomy and control over how I show up and how I do what I do. And what doesn't feel good is being locked into a system where someone else is, pulling all the strings and I'm just a cog in a wheel. No one wants to be a cog in a wheel.
I don't know that I agree with that.
Okay. Well, this has been fun then. We'll talk later.
Oh, well, I think there's degrees to that. There are a lot of people for the work that I do as a coach, like it's very self-selecting, like the people that tend to come to me, especially the ones that I choose to work with, because not everybody is a good fit for me. But they are self-selecting and they have a growth mindset, and they're always knowledge work people, which hits different. But there are people that I've known, like they would like to just be told what to do and have a structure when they go to work, but they do want to be appreciated and heard. And so even if they're a cog in the wheel that mostly wants to fly under the radar, you still have to show appreciation to them. And it's sorely missing. I often talk to people about networking as part of my work as a coach, because it's fundamental whether you want to network internally to work towards a promotion, network externally to build industry contacts or help find a job. And I always tell people the top thing to do is to think of somebody that you worked with in the past that you haven't talked to in a while and send them a note saying that you appreciated them for something back in the day.
Yeah.
So
I see your answer and I raise you this pushback. That is
right on. Let's do it.
That is no one tells a cog that they appreciate them. So
okay, that's fair.
So when I say no one wants to be a cog, no one wants to be truly invisible. So sometimes people want to work in a systematized environment, but if they want to feel like they're noticed, they don't want to be invisible.
That's totally fair. That is totally fair. I'll take that.
Okay.
I think we were saying kind of the same thing.
I think we're on the same wavelength.
Yeah. So hope, I mentioned this earlier. A lot of people think, churchy, gross.
Yeah.
It has no place in a professional environment. Like your professional environment is the church, but most of us, it's not. So what's your response to the idea that hope is only a churchy concept?
My response is you are wrong. And that's the end of this discussion. No, but it is. My response is to try to help people to understand what hope actually is. Because I understand it's a churchy type of concept, but hope isn't the property of the church. The word has existed a lot longer than that. And in many contexts, first and foremost for me in that Greek thought, and in the Roman world, Seneca talked a lot about hope. Confucius, even way back longer than that, Confucius was talking about hope, and so hope existed long before the concept of a church. And it's a shame because the church has turned hope more into an escape hatch than what I think hope actually is.
I think people gaslight with faith and hope in a
100%.
lot of environments, both religious and especially religious environments. I've seen it used for gaslighting. So Confucius talked about it. Seneca talked about it. We're going to get to stoicism in a minute. But what is your definition for regular old, mostly American people that are going to watch this podcast?
Okay.
What is your definition of hope?
Yeah. So hope is the inevitable response to a person's perception of their ability to set goals and move towards them in specific ways. Their ability to affect their environment and their future in at least in some meaningful way.
Okay.
That's what hope is.
I love that. And I like that you've abstracted it out. What is the difference? So you've used adjacent to this concept of hope,
Hmm.
the word control a
Hmm.
couple of times. And I have a complicated relationship with control.
Hmm.
For a couple of reasons. Number one, I grew up with teachers so we were kind of like a rule following, do your duty in my
Hmm.
family of origin kind
Yeah.
of thing. I'm also an Enneagram 8, which for anybody that is unfamiliar with Enneagram, it's that personality thing with the numbers. We
Hmm.
can get someone on the show and talk about it more sometime if you want. But my Enneagram number, basically the top fear is being controlled.
Yeah.
And then there's this addiction that we have as a society, especially in Western culture, to controlling everything.
Hmm.
So I have long felt, even before I started studying stoicism, which is the thing that brought me out of the big fat hole, that control, you can never control another person. Like I
Correct.
figured that out early. But what else can you like? How do you see the difference between what you can control and what you can't control in your life? Because I think that if you don't understand that, then the hope part gets to
Yeah.
be hard.
Yeah. So, I think that you have to admit anybody that experiences life to any degree has to admit that there are things that we can't control. Maybe most things, maybe just many things, but certainly some things. That's not really the hard part for people. The hard part for people is when they start to believe that there's nothing they control or that nothing they can do, whether that is you know pagan deterministic, heavily fatalistic mindsets, or in the church
Mhm.
the more deterministic or heavily sovereign type of view, like everything's all part of a plan. You're just an actor,
Yeah.
whether it's Shakespeare, all the world is a stage, and we're just extras in it or actors in it. um,
Yeah.
and so when you rob someone of the understanding that you can't, saying you can't do everything isn't the same as saying you can't do anything.
Mhm.
There's always something you can do. So one of my favorite stories is for Anthony Ray Hinton and the book "The Sun Does Shine," how he found hope and faith on death row. So Anthony Ray Hinton was wrongly convicted of a murder he didn't commit, and spent 30 years on Alabama's death row. And I can't think of anything more hopeless than living in a 5 by 7 cell waiting to be killed for something you didn't do for 30 years. And nor can I think of a place where you have less control than that.
Yeah,
And
that's for sure.
Anthony in his book describes where he was angry, he was frustrated, he was bitter, he wanted to lash out, and he came to the decision that there are many things I can't control about this situation, but I'm going to choose to focus on the things I can do, and live in hope with the things that I can do, which was his mindset, which was how he treated other people, how he chose to live his day within the confines of the rules that were set for him. And just doing those things, he began to alter his situation. So your situation is a combination of your circumstances and you. And
Mm.
you
Say
usually,
that one more time.
all right,
I love that.
okay, so your situation is a combination of your circumstances plus you. So we focus on our circumstances a lot, and you can't always change your circumstances, but you always have an impact. And this is directly a Stoic thought. You always have an impact on how you respond to your circumstances. When you do that, when you change something about you and your actions in those circumstances, you effectively alter your situation. So
Okay.
that's why I say there's never nothing you can do. Even in the most highly restrictive circumstances, you still retain the ability to do something that can. And when you see that you can do that and you do it and you see the change, hope levels automatically rise inside
Yeah,
of you when you see that.
it's amazing the small things
Hmm.
that can impact hope. I think this equation of situation equals circumstances plus you, or the other way around, like
Yeah.
for a math problem.
Yeah.
Um, I think that's incredibly powerful.
Mm.
And one of the things that I took, well, there's a whole lot to unpack there. Number one, please send me a link to that book later,
Okay.
because it sounds like an interesting one.
It's phenomenal.
Two other people that come to mind as well that were in impossible situations are Nelson Mandela, who
Hmm.
was in jail for he was in prison for I don't even remember how many years, like 20 or something like that. And he got to in solitary for most, if not all the time, and he got to
Yeah.
see somebody like once a year for a
Mm.
half an hour. And then the other one is Viktor Frankl.
Yes. Yep.
Um, I just read a very powerful story from my friend Kelly, who was writing a speech on this. Her grandfather actually was with the force that liberated
Oh, wow.
Dachau, and that's where Frankl was whenever he got out. So, like those stories. But what do you say to people who look at that and go, "Okay, well, you got a head of state. You have
Hmm.
basically we're giving extreme examples. A guy
Okay.
on death row, a guy in a concentration camp, a guy in prison for political reasons for 17 years. What do you say to the person that is like, I'm just a regular person.
Hmm.
I work at the IRS. I'm one of the 7,000 probationary employees that got let go last month as part of government downsizing.
Hmm.
I don't have any idea what the heck I'm gonna do. I don't know what I'm qualified for. Plus there's 7,000 other people that are qualified for the same thing.
Hmm.
What do you tell somebody that feels like their life is falling apart due to something that major, um, about hope and about how they can impact it?
I would
Mm.
tell them, first of all, that it's appropriate to acknowledge the wrong that's been done to you. You don't
Ugh,
need to you don't need to suppress that. That's appropriate to say what has happened to me is unjust.
yeah.
But if I choose to get angry about it, if I choose to get bitter about it or rage against the machine and just kind of descend into that dark place, I can do that. That's my choice. That's something I can do. But you will miss opportunities that are out there if you choose to live in anger rather than living with the belief that even when bad things and unjust things happen, I can still control what I can control and start looking for options. And there are options out there. You don't have to know what they
Mhm.
are right now, but you do have to make a choice first and foremost that I'm going to choose not to allow this situation to make me angry and bitter because then I won't see the options that are. We all know that when you're angry, you can talk all the reason and rationality you want to me, but when I'm angry, I'm not listening to you.
No,
And so
no.
so an option could be right in front of you and you'll miss it if you choose to walk around in anger.
So
Um,
what I'm hearing is there's first a decision.
mhm.
You have to make a decision that you are going to be open and actively looking for even tiny reasons
Mhm.
to feel autonomy and hope.
Yep.
Yes? That's
Yes,
part 1.
absolutely.
Um, I I feel like I've been doing that a lot lately, and I think a lot of people are. Well, I wish more people were. I think there's a
Mhm.
lot of extra frustration right now
For sure.
in the US because we're seeing all these changes in policy from the federal government come fast and furious. We don't even know what all they mean.
Right.
Um, so when I think about that, if I ever get I've found myself a number of times in the last few weeks getting worked up because I didn't understand something. I was afraid what it would mean for me or for my family or for
Yeah.
people I serve. But then I realized, like, I'm in my house right now.
Mhm.
There's nothing around me that can hurt me. And I'll just literally sit there for like 2 minutes, even, and say, nothing can hurt me right now.
Yeah.
There's nothing that can hurt me right now. I can just sit here in peace right now for the next 60 seconds. And I don't know about you, but I found that incredibly powerful.
Absolutely.
So,
Yep.
um,
Absolutely.
let's see. how long have you been into reading and learning about stoicism? Because it sounds like this is a big part of your Hopi stuff.
Well, I'm a voracious reader and I don't read fiction. So that means and I love the ideas of epistemology, which is how we learn and how we know what we know, as well as different belief systems. And Stoicism was attractive to me first and foremost because of its concurrence, at least in the Roman age of it, its concurrence with Jesus and the Apostle Paul.
Oh, yeah. Mhm.
Seneca was a contemporary. I don't know if he ever met them, but he lived at the same time that they did.
Mhm.
I think he died in 65 AD. So, or CE, however that you want to say that. So probably to answer your question, 7 or 8 years when I first was introduced to it, and I was first introduced to it through Ryan Holiday's book on The Obstacle is the Way. Um,
I have this little guy, this Daily Stoic, for
yes.
anybody that is interested in dipping their toe into what we're talking about
Yep.
and using some of these concepts that Mark has in place to inject hope and kind of calm your soul a little bit.
Mhm.
The Daily Stoic Journal is a huge one. I'm on my like seventh trip through it.
Yeah.
And I think you and I found it at about the same time. You've done more reading than I have, but I have read The Obstacle is the
Okay.
Way.
Have you read any of like Marcus Aurelius or Seneca's
I
work?
have not read any Seneca outside like things that I've read from like the Daily Stoic, like
Mhm.
on the blog or whatever in the
Yep.
journal. I have read some Marcus Aurelius. The thing that kind of started for me, I mentioned in 2018, I was having a very, very difficult time. But around that same time, the boss that I liked and I had this crazy conversation where we got on the topic of Rome. And part of what happened was I had worked with this person for a couple of years in the company, and then they brought me in a different department, and then they brought me in to report to him in the product management team. And so I asked him, like, what made you want to pull me in to your team? Because
Mhm.
I knew it was beyond my expertise. And he said, I watched you go from being very Greek to being more Roman over
Mm.
the time we worked together. And I was like, I'm going to need you to unpack that for me. And so he's talked about how the Greeks were very concerned with form and perfection and things like
Yep.
that. And the Romans were more concerned about practicality.
Yes.
And he had watched me evolve to be less, I want to do things because this is how we're supposed to do them, and more, what are we trying to accomplish here?
Yeah.
Comfortable with things that were a little more messy. And it ended up in a conversation about, like, well, who's your favorite Roman Empire? Which I like to jokingly answer that question with Caligula because he was horrible. And people go, that doesn't seem like you. But really, he said Marcus Aurelius. And then we started talking about Stoicism. I had a couple other friends that were kind of into it. And that led me to that handy dandy little book, which the process of really digging through what I can control and what I can't control with the help of things like the Daily Stoic helped me realize that the only thing I can control is me and my mindset. Like,
Yeah.
you can't even actually control your own body, which people argue with me about all the time. You can't control your children. You can
Definitely.
physically remove them and you can
Right.
try to punish them, but you can't control them.
Yeah, there's a difference between
And
restraint and control.
yes, yeah, restraint or constraint and control are very
Mhm.
different. And you can't really control your body because, like, what if your body decides you want some cancer? Like,
Yeah.
it's gonna have some cancer. Like, you can't do anything about that. So I started picking through, like, which of these things are under my control and which of these things are not under my control. And I'm really stubborn. So it took a long time, and I
Yeah.
still am discovering this all the time. But now it's one of the top things that I very practically talk about my clients with, particularly unemployed people in a job search. I think it's the most important for me
Yes.
to remind them which thing in this you can control and can't control. Um, my shorthand for that is if someone else has to make a decision, then you don't control it.
Right.
You can influence it though.
Yeah.
So you can influence by putting your best foot forward. So,
Absolutely.
um, your LinkedIn
Hmm.
says you help leaders create a culture of hope in their organizations.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of times we say things like that on LinkedIn, and they're like, sounds cool in your headline. What does that actually mean? So,
Yeah.
what does that actually mean?
It means helping leaders who are the ones who have the ability to make the necessary changes. It means helping leaders create a workplace environment where people have a sense of autonomy, where they have a sense where they can make some decisions that can affect their daily routines, even in the most systematized workplace environments like fast food, even um,
Hmm.
because when people have that sense of autonomy, that sense of, if you want autonomy instead of control, when they have a feeling like I can direct this, like my decisions matter, my voice matters,
Yeah.
then their hope levels rise because they realize there are some things I can do here. And when their hope levels rise, employee longevity, the studies show that people will stay at work longer. Studies show people will be more productive, and they'll actually choose to stay in a job for less money with more hope
Yep.
than a job with greater money, that's more restrictive or soul crushing. So it's one of the best things that a company or organization can do for their employees and for their company without spending in conceivably without even spending a lot more money.
Yeah. What is so let's talk about a scenario here that
Okay.
I think a lot of people have felt. Let's say you're working with a leader, whether it's a company owner or like a team manager or director, I don't think it really matters for this conversation. But you have someone that is a leader of people and they have traditionally had a very tight amount of control
Mhm.
on their team, and they know they need to make changes to improve their team, but they are clutching on to all of the decisions and control. It's like, with their, you can take it from my cold dead hands vibes.
Mhm.
What are some of the first things that you do to help that person shift so that their team can shift?
One of the questions that I like to ask them is, what difference would it make around here if everybody came to work like they owned the place?
Oh,
Um,
that's a great
because
decision
normally the
or great
response normally the response is, well, that's what
question.
they do now. Nobody's listening to me. It's like, that's not see, that's the problem. Owners don't act like that. Owners are invested in the company. Like,
Right.
what difference would it make if everybody who came to work like they had a stake here?
Yeah.
That's what we mean by that. And do you think they're showing up like they own the place now? And if not, what do you think we could do to change that? Those are the
Uh,
first those are the first three questions we would walk through.
ooh. Um, so then presumably you hear, "Oh my gosh, it would be so much better," because that's really why you came up with those questions, is you figured out the answer is, "Oh my gosh, that's gonna make things so much better." How do you start to help that manager release decisions and loosen up the environment? What are
I do that by empowering that leader or manager to actually make decisions that matter. A lot of micromanagers and people that are hyper controlling are actually feeling a lack of control themselves. So
Mm,
so for example, real case scenario, instead of having a daily meeting where you tell everybody everything they have to do today and then get on to them for production being down, and so we're going to do this and this. Instead, have a meeting where you give people the opportunity. I don't care if it's once a week or once a month. Give them the opportunity, the people on the floor, to talk to you about what's working and not working. You don't have to promise that you're going to do everything they say, but that you're always going to look for one thing that makes a difference and do your best to implement it. So the leader still gets to be the one saying, "That's a good idea. Let's implement that." The worker says, "That was my idea that they implemented." And so now we're working together to
mhm.
increase. Now we're both showing up like we own the place. So you're not stripping a leader of their role as a leader. So it's not some kind of non-leader leadership mantra. It's you are a leader, but here's one of the things you can do. Here's the kind of decisions you can make that will empower the people that work for you as well, while you still retaining that leadership role.
I think that's really important too, because a lot of people, like, they might be a manager, they want to be the VP someday.
Mhm.
You don't make it to VP unless you have trained some people behind you on how to make good decisions of the types that you would make. Because fundamentally, at the end of the day, the top job of a manager at
Yep.
whatever level is to make decisions that impact their span of control.
Yeah.
I'm also reminded as you talk about this, I worked in the software development world for a bazillion years, like almost 20 years before
Mhm.
I left to just focus on my own business. And in agile software development, which is what I did for most of my career, we have a methodology called Scrum.
Mhm.
It's centered around what's called a Scrum team, which does come from the concept of a rugby scrum, where they're in
I'm
football, it's
nodding my head,
huddle.
but I have no idea what you're talking about.
Well, in it's like a football huddle.
Okay, okay, okay.
It's a lot like a football huddle. There's a term in rugby that's called scrum, which is very much the same thing. And so in the football huddle, yes, you might have the quarterback communicating things like, here's what we're about to do.
Mhm.
But the quarterback can't control anything. The quarterback can say, our outcome is that we're trying to get the first down from this third and long situation. We're going to do this play, like, and then you're crossing your fingers hoping that everything works and the defenders aren't too good at blocking you, right?
Yes.
So that's kind of what happens, and that is designed, the principle behind it when done well is that the facilitator of the team in agile, which is called a scrum master,
Okay.
or sometimes called like a team coach, things like that, they are helping people understand this is the outcome we're shooting for, and then asking the rest of the team, do you understand what you need to do? Do you have any blockers to
Mm.
us meeting that outcome over the next day or week or however long between meetings? So it's very similar to what you're talking about. So we have a sports analogy. We've got your real world analogy. We've got this software development analogy. It can work in many different contexts.
Nice.
A lot of people are out of work right now.
Yeah.
And what's one of the most interesting things about it is the number of people. It's often been called a white collar recession.
Yeah.
So we see a lot of people that look like they're very fancy on the outside. They have a big house and a nice car, and they just lost their $150,000 job with the fancy benefits, and they are not feeling hope. And in some cases, it doesn't look that much different than the person that makes $15 an hour and had been barely scraping by in an
Mhm.
apartment with a roommate and an old car. So, what do you see as the similarities and the differences between those two situations? Like, are those really as much different as we think they are, or is there a lot of similarity between hope, lack of hope, and kind of capturing a sense of hope, even when there's a big socioeconomic difference?
I think the principles are the same wherever you fall on that continuum. I don't think,
Okay.
yeah, I think the principles work. The details are different, but the principles are the same.
Okay. I'm inclined to agree with you. Most of the people that I work with are kind of in the, 120 and up. I've had
Mhm.
clients that make insane money that I'll never see in my life.
Yeah.
But the difference in my observation in my career is that success in, say, a job search in a weird environment like this current white collar recession,
Mhm.
and not success, it's not driven by whether people are better qualified, whether they applied for more jobs, whether they
Mhm.
networked better nearly as much as it is whether they had the mindset to keep going.
Yeah.
And you can't keep going if you don't have hope.
No, you won't keep
So
going without hope.
you
Nope.
just aren't going to. I have like a lightning round that's probably not really going to be a lightning round because it's not yes or no questions, but I want to I want to run through this with you if you're open to it.
Okay, well, I'll just answer yes or no, no matter what question it is, and then
Don't do that. That won't be fun for anyone but you.
okay.
Okay, what's the worst piece of career advice you've ever received?
The worst, stay the course.
Ah, tell me more about that.
Okay, I hate it because it's two things. It's based on the sunk cost fallacy and the escalation of commitment fallacy, that
Ah,
just because
yeah.
something's not working, if we just do more of it, or that the most important thing in life is never to change, And the truth of the matter is, if something's not
The
working, the sooner
opposite.
you change course, the better you're going to be.
Yeah.
But
I used to work for a guy who was a VP direct. He was a product executive at a company I worked for. His name was Peter, and he used to say that one of his top jobs was to help convince people to stop doing the same stupid shit harder.
mhm,
So that falls in
yep,
that bucket. What
yep.
is a red flag in the job interview that people ignore too often? You might not interview as much, so if this is a hard question, but what's a red flag in picking a new job? Let's call it that people ignore too often.
I think if they can't tell you what place you're going to have, why it's important that you're in this position. If they're just looking to fill a spot and you're a warm body, I wouldn't I don't want to be a warm body in an empty
Yeah,
spot.
if they don't know what the role is for,
Yep.
they can't tell you the outcomes.
No.
Cool. What is a mindset shift that you wish more people would make? So you can dig a little deeper on some of this Hopi stuff if you would like. What's a specific mindset shift you'd like to see more people make?
I'd like more people to change their mind on the tagline that I use, that there's never nothing you can do. That
Okay.
there's always, in any situation, no matter how hopeless it appears, there's always something you can do. And when you do that thing, other things start to happen.
Yeah.
And so just being stuck in that mindset of there's nothing I can do, I'm trapped, I'm stuck. Like, if you tell yourself that, it's true, but I promise you there's something you can do.
Cool. I'm inclined to agree. Even if it's sitting for 2 minutes and
Yes.
calming yourself down, that is something that you can do. The other day, I cleaned out my linen closet, and
I'm
now
sorry.
I have only the sheets that I actually wanna own, and they
Uh,
are nice. Um, what's a totally useless skill that you have that you're weirdly proud of?
I can carve faces into golf balls.
I'm sorry, what?
I can carve faces into golf balls. Do you want to see one?
Yeah, go get one. I gotta see this.
If I don't fall off here, let me show you.
You have a harp behind you.
That's
Do
a
you
skill that I
also
have that I'm actually proud of. So,
Okay. Well,
okay,
you're weirdly proud of.
so here it is. Here's a golf ball that I carve a face into.
What?
Totally useless, but I'm really proud of it.
I like it. Who is that supposed to be? Is it just a character, or
Just
did you
anybody. Yeah, I'm not
Alright.
talented enough to
You're not
do, like, yeah, it's just
you're
whatever
not
face.
talented enough
Yeah.
to, like, carve my face into a
No,
golf
I'm more
ball.
like Michelangelo. I look at a golf ball and I see a face in there and I just take away everything
Oh,
else.
you just take away anything that isn't the
That's
character.
right.
I love that. What is a common misconception people have about your work?
That I don't.
That's a real thing for pastors.
It really is.
I think people just wait around for someone to need something.
Yep. Well, and it's true. A lot of pastors are just fat lazy.
Hmm.
They just are lazy. So it
Yeah.
is an earned reputation, but it's not true in my case or in many cases.
What are 2 things that you are doing that people don't see, but that matter as a pastor?
Oh, that's a
That
great
is not on my
question.
piece of paper, I just came up with that one, so
Wow, two things that I'm doing. I feel like Jeopardy music should be playing right now.
I'm not gonna do
Um,
that. If you only have one, that's fine, but I'd just love for us to share an example since a lot of people may
I
feel like
feel
their pastor doesn't do as much.
I feel so. I'm dreaming. I'm dreaming. And a lot of people don't see that. I dream constantly, both for the organization itself and for the people that are in it, where I see potential and where things could be. And a lot of people don't see dreams.
Yeah, they think that they think much more closer and more tactical,
Hmm.
especially in a small congregation.
Yeah.
What's a question you have for me?
What drives you?
I hate seeing people waste their lives.
Mm,
So I am in a position, it's honestly my top fear, and my ability to move forward and really commit to my business
yeah.
came about when I recognized that I was much more afraid of wasting my life than I was of any financial repercussions from maybe failing in a business.
Okay.
So that was the thing for me. And I see a lot of people who have a lot of money and family and stuff and opportunity, and they feel trapped. So
Hmm.
you and I have that in common. Or they just spend their whole career on something that they either dislike or that's only okay. I
Yeah.
think actually only okay is the most dangerous, because only okay chips away at you and chips away at you until one day you're like, "Heck, what have I done with 20 years of my life?"
Yeah.
So, what are you working on right now? Like, what kind of project, or I think you have a new community. Do you want to tell the people a little bit about that?
Maybe a little bit. I mean, so in the hope space, I'm working on two things. One is working with individuals personally who may find themselves in a low
Ah,
hope setting. So I have a small membership group. There are 10 people in there right now. We're just and they're just supporting each other. I have video content and I write in there inside of that Facebook group. And that's so I'm working on that. The biggest thing that I'm working on right now is building connections and developing a framework to be able to step into the corporate world or the nonprofit world in a greater way to help those businesses and nonprofits build that culture of hope. Like, I'd love to be able to do that. Um, when I hear managers say, I can't get people to stay, no one comes to work, I want to
yeah.
say, can we have a conversation? Because I think I might be able to help you if you're open to it. Um, and there's a reason that people are that way. And I think we could make an impact. We can't solve all the problems, but I bet we could solve a lot.
No. No, I think that's exceptional. It's very important now, right now
Mhm.
too. There's
Yep.
so much, like one of the interesting things for me as a coach has been that I've worked with a lot of people where they might lack hope, they might need direction, they might need some perspective shifts, even
Mhm.
therapy or spiritual counsel.
Yep.
But we've kind of known the construct that we were working in, and right now that feels like it's changing a lot very quickly.
Yes.
So even for me, I'm like, do I actually know how to help people anymore? And then I
Yeah.
go back, and oftentimes it is the conversation for 5 minutes that
Yep.
matters more than anything else. So
Yep.
if people want to figure out what you're doing, like if they wanted to work with you
Mhm.
as an individual, where would you reach out? Where would they reach out to you? Um,
They could go to my Facebook page, my Facebook profile, and reach out to me there.
okay.
Certainly in the professional space, LinkedIn would be also. I'm new on LinkedIn, but I'm building a network there, so I would love to connect with you on LinkedIn, and we could have
Mark's
those
new on
conversations.
LinkedIn, so that means he doesn't have as much spam in his inbox, and he
It's
can
exactly
actually
right.
answer your DM. So
Yeah,
go with that
absolutely.
for sure.
Um, And, if someone reached out to you, I'd be happy to share like a phone number and stuff too. Just not going to do that live on here.
What, we're not
So,
putting his phone number
mhm.
is 867
Right? Yeah.
His
So,
name is Jenny.
um,
Absolutely. Yeah, we can give that to them. So we've got again
You could also go to my website, strengthenedbyhope.com, and there's a contact form. Right now, there's just one page on that website. It's a landing page with a contact form. If you want to fill that out, then I can contact you that way.
All right. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Mark.
Hey, this has been a blast. I loved it.
Did you say this was your first podcast?
This is my 5th podcast interview, but the first one that's been live. And so, wow. So no chance to like undo anything if I say the wrong thing.
Come on, that's like church on Sunday.
That's true. I say a lot of wrong things then too.
It's the same. You probably talked to more people at church last Sunday. Like,
yeah, but just about every Sunday I go home and I'm like, dang it, why did I say that thing?
Yeah, it's the perpetual. I had the perfect thing, and I thought of it 15 minutes after I was done with church. So, or the conversation.
My smartest things happen. My smartest thoughts are in the shower when no one can hear me.
Mine are on road trips when you can't organize them.
Yeah.
Like you'll be driving, and I don't road trip a lot, but I'll be driving across I-70 to St. Louis. I have family that live in St. Louis. And I always think of the best stuff. And I'm like, I can't capture any of this because I'm driving. So I'm never going to remember that. I guess really, if I do remember it, that means it was probably the most important thing. So
that's right.
Well, thank you so much for coming on Work Should Feel Good today.
Hey, I enjoyed it.
I look forward to seeing how you continue in this work, especially how you help corporate leaders on helping their teams have more hope.
Thank you, Diana.
Have a great day.
You too.
All right.